Let me start by saying Google has arrived. Finally, the Pixel 9 Pro marks, in my opinion, the first time we're getting a true flagship device from Google that embodies all the things that make the Pixel a unique experience that showcases the best that Android has to offer, wrapped up in undoubtedly the nicest package we've ever seen in a Pixel device. And Google totally nailed it. The Pixel 9 Pro, for better or for worse, is the iPhone for Android people. And I mean that in the most positive way possible. For years, it's always been a back and forth between iPhone and Android users and who had the better phones, ecosystem, customization, performance, whatever. But notice how the argument is usually phrased as iPhone versus Android rather than iOS versus Android. And the reason for that is because only an iPhone can run iOS. It's a full service experience from end to end, handcrafted by Apple and only Apple. And for the longest time, there really wasn't a device on the Android side that could make the same claim. Until the Pixel. And while I'd argue that the Pixel back in 2016 definitely emerged at a disadvantage, Google has somehow pressed the fast forward button to bring the Pixel from what many considered a budget average smartphone to what is now considered a true Android flagship device in 2024. So what changed? Immediately, what sets the Pixel 9 Pro apart from its older siblings is simply its design language. Google took what was familiar about a premium handheld experience today and made it their own. I'm talking flat edges with large rounded corners, soft touch glass with a small logo in the center. Sound familiar? Lining it up next to the Pixel 7 Pro XL and the iPhone 15 Pro Max, you'll notice some pretty obvious choices that Google made in order to make the Pixel 9 Pro XL look and feel more familiar. And that's sort of the theme with the hardware design on the Pixel 9 across the board. I have to imagine somewhere at Google, they all sat down and said, make it feel like an iPhone. But honestly, I think it was the right move. Heck, if you think about it, Google's Pixel lineup is almost identical to Apple's now with the exception of the Fold. And while Apple may have moved away from the shiny side rails, I kind of dig it on the Pixel, although because it's aluminum, they scratch super easy, which is a good reminder that you'll probably want a case for your new shiny phone, which, might I add, comes with a new shiny price. The Pixel 9 Pro XL starts at $1,100, and that's only for the 128GB model, which, quite frankly, in this day and age, is a bit criminal on a flagship phone, especially a Pro model. In any case, turning the Pixel over reveals Google's one and only unique design element, the visor. Or is it the bean now? I swear I heard someone call it the bean, and now I can't stop thinking about it. Either way, I love it. I think it gives the Pixel 9 just enough character to clearly separate it from the likes of an iPhone while actually providing some level of functionality. That's right, the Pixel 9 Pro XL does not in fact wobble on a table, which is a silly thing to have to mention, but here we are. Jokes aside though, the camera visor to me is what really stood out from a design perspective. Overall, picking up and holding the Pixel 9 Pro will likely be a pleasant surprise, especially if you're coming from a previous Pixel device. Even though the display hasn't changed much, if you've been chasing that iPhone fit and finish but with the guts of a Pixel, this is the one. Google copied Apple's homework and quite literally changed it just enough to keep people from calling it a copy. But Google is a software company after all, so I'm not surprised that the spirit of the Pixel is still very much in the software, and boy, does the Pixel 9 Pro pack some software, starting with the camera. As one well-known tech enthusiast might say, what is a photo? And the answer to that question after getting my hands on the Pixel 9 Pro has only become more complex the longer I use it. So let's start with the facts. You know, the things we can all agree on. Just like last year, the Pixel 9 Pro has 3 cameras. A 50 megapixel main camera, a slightly new 48 megapixel ultra-wide camera, and of course a 48 megapixel telephoto camera. I'm not really including the selfie camera here because I don't think it's as important as the rear cameras, but you can tell me if you disagree in the comments. The photos from all 3 cameras are great. The standard processing Google does to photos turns any user into a pretty good photographer. I generally was satisfied with the quality of the photos from each camera in different environments. I'll put up some side-by-sides of the Pixel 9 Pro XL and the iPhone 15 Pro Max, along with a couple shots from the iPhone 16 Pro, so you can see the difference, but overall, the picture quality out of the Pixel 9 Pro XL is on par with other flagships, and you'd be hard-pressed to see a difference unless you pixel peep, and and even then, most of you are posting to social platforms anyway, so unless you're using your phone for professional photography, you'll be plenty happy with the performance from the Pixel. One thing I do think that stands out amongst other flagships is Google's Pro camera tools. These are easily accessible in the camera app and make it easier for you to make more defined changes in the camera to get just the shot you're looking for. This also enables a ton of creativity without the constant hand-holding of the AI overlords trying to tell you how to take a photo. How rude. You can even disable the smart lens selection and instead manually choose which camera you want to shoot with without having to worry about the Pixel cropping in on the main sensor, which is such an underrated feature because I honestly hate when phones crop in digitally rather than just let me choose which lens I want. Then again, I'm a professional photographer, so that adds up. Speaking of Pro settings, this is also where you can swap from 12 megapixel to 50 megapixel and even enable RAW shooting if, again, you're into that sort of thing. But with 128 gigabytes of storage, I wouldn't recommend shooting outside the 12 megapixel standard photo. Along with lens selection, you also get access to all the other Pro settings like manual focus, ISO, and shutter speed, which are typically only found on third-party apps, so big kudos to Google for making it much more accessible right out of the box. Now, when it comes to video, you get a similar list of settings and adjustments along with some fun video modes that are more of a demonstration of the processing going on, but cool to play with nonetheless. One of the new standout features is the ability to film in 8K as well as turn on video boost, which will take your video and attempt to adjust and upscale it to appear higher quality. This, however, restricts what modes you can shoot in, as well as requires you to wait as your video is uploaded in order to be processed. This seems like one of the only major features that isn't processed on device. So if you plan to use Video Boost, just make sure you have a steady internet connection or else you won't actually see the improved video until much later. But when it finishes, you'll be able to select it within your original video and voila, 8K video on a smartphone. Not awful, but also probably more on the gimmicky side. I used it maybe once for fun and then never thought about it again. Then finally, you have the more abstract camera features. These are things like the Add Me mode and some of the interesting modifications you can make to your photo to turn it into, well, I guess the photo you imagined it to be. This is where the lines start to blur and the echoes of the question, what is a photo, really start to become a reality. Then you have Pixel Studio and all the reimagining editing tools that essentially let you do whatever you want to your photos. You can circle to erase things, reimagine something in your shot to be something else, like, I don't know, turn your girlfriend's cat into a jet ski. Yeah, because that's cool and stuff. I will say the circle to remove is useful when it works, and the ability to recrop a photo to get a better composition is also pretty useful when it works. The thing is, we're still too early in the age of AI that unfortunately, unless you've gotten really good at knowing how Google's model reacts, you're likely only going to get a pleasing effect 30 to 40% of the time. The other 60% of the time, you just get a mess of pixels. I'd say most average smartphone users will probably use the erase feature the most, but likely won't mess with the reimagine or generative tools much past the first couple days simply because it completely tampers with the spirit of the original photo. People use their smartphones to capture genuine moments of life happening, and while it's fun to edit them to make them look better, I'd argue most people don't edit their smartphone photos after they take them. Isn't that why there's so much post-processing built into smartphone cameras anyway? This leads me to believe that most people also don't have any interest in reimagining that photo of their cat sitting by the window. They just want the photo of their cat sitting by the window. TLDR, the AI camera features work well when they work, but fail spectacularly when they don't. Okay, so Google's AI actually does a lot more than tamper with your photos. Gemini does a lot more than just tamper with your photos. I feel like Google is constantly having an identity crisis across all their properties. But in any case, Gemini, not to be confused with Google Assistant, who's still alive and well, by the way, has now made the Google Pixel its official home. And with that comes some pretty powerful tools. Tools that you'll actually probably use if you remember to use them. That, and if you're willing to pay the extra $20 a month to get the full array of capabilities Gemini has to offer. Granted, Google is giving everyone 1 month for free, but I opted to use the discount Gemini to see if it was any good since it's what most people will get out of the box. Now, There's a few ways to interact with Gemini on the Pixel 9. You can either hold the power button to activate it or just open the Gemini app. You can also chat with Gemini in your Messages app. Once you're in, you can either tell Gemini what's on your mind or type it into the prompt window. You can also include photos to help Gemini better understand what you're talking about. If you've used any other large language model AI before, Gemini is really no different. You ask it questions, it talks to you, you ask it more specific questions, it gives you more specific answers, and so on. Gemini is designed to be able to hold a conversation by remembering where it was in the conversation to make it easier for you to continue to dive deeper without having to repeat yourself every single time. I'd say most of the time, it was pretty accurate. To be fair, I'm not an avid AI chat user, but it did help me with some pretty specific questions. Like, for instance, I've recently been replaying Cyberpunk 2077 and wanted to know if I could finish the main storyline without messing up the DLC story. A pretty specific question that may or may not have a definite answer. Gemini managed to not only answer my question up front, which I noticed is a trend, but it also went on to explain why, which I found to be super useful. I could totally see myself using Gemini on a regular basis for researching topics that I'd otherwise do myself. It can also reach into select apps to perform tasks for you, if you know how to ask it. And of course, there's some other cool features like the Screenshots app that lets you search screenshots based on what the context of the shot is, as well as all the smart calling features we've come to love on previous models. One of my favorites is the new Call Notes feature that will record your phone call and summarize it using Gemini. It'll also keep the full transcript in case you need a specific part, as well as the full audio recording of the call. But keep in mind, when you activate it, the person on the other side of the line is going to hear Gemini come on and say, "This call is being recorded and we are listening to everything that you say." But in any case, super useful for business calls or even a call with the doctor. If there's anything I've learned about AI, it's that you have to know how to interact with it. Speak its language, if you will, which I guess isn't far off from where we came from with digital assistants like Siri and Google Assistant. While Gemini can certainly assimilate more information and provide it in a more contextualized format, you still have to know how to get there. AI is still a ways away from being able to more or less read your mind. That doesn't mean that all the features that Gemini has to offer are useless or gimmicky. You just have to be willing to spend the time to learn how to use them to get actual results. I truly think learning how to prompt an AI is definitely a skill and requires a muscle that not everyone has. And in order for people to want to exercise that muscle, there has to be a need, a sense of urgency. And in the current state of AI and how it's implemented into our daily lives, I don't think we're quite there yet. Regardless, one thing I do think the Pixel does right is make AI accessible, on device, right out of the box. This takes the guesswork out of trying to figure out which AI you should use and instead gives you the opportunity to really get used to Gemini and learn its quirks so that over time, it can better serve you. I said this before with the Pixel 7 and that Google is the master at teaching you how to use your phone. There's a treasure trove of educational content tucked away in the Pixel that essentially tells you everything you'd ever want to know about your phone and how to use it, along with great visual guides that I think help define the Pixel as its own unique experience. People say it all the time. It's the Pixel experience, and it's returned again in the Pixel 9 Pro XL better than ever. Even though Google is still a software company at its core, I think the Pixel 9 Pro XL proves that Google can make a premium flagship device that serves to be the definitive Android experience once and for all. But that's gonna be it for this one. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button, and as always, make sure to subscribe to see more content like this. And I'll see you all very soon. Peace.